Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime. Liverpool are taking on Cardiff City this weekend. It's a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff. We are crucially playing before all of our Premier League title rivals, and I will come onto that in a little bit. But I think most of all, this game really does feel like the perfect opportunity to build on that win against Red Star. You know, after we finally started to feel like our attack was clicking into gear, we had a little bit of a formation tweak, and that is again something that I'll come onto a little bit later on in the show. But it felt like Jurgen Klopp had finally found a way to get the best out of our front three this season after what have been quite a few games where it's just felt a little bit stagnant. It's felt like it hasn't really been clicking, and I think after that performance, what you really want to see is just something very, very similar. We want to make sure that that wasn't a one-off, that wasn't just a night where everyone was at the absolute top of their game. We want to see that that is going to start becoming the norm from now until the end of the season. And Cardiff are, no disrespect to them, but at the same time a little bit of disrespect intended, because they are not that great, let's be honest. They are the perfect team for us to try and do that against, especially when it's a game at home as well. And of course, like I said, all of our title rivals are playing after us and crucially have some pretty difficult games as well. You know, obviously the standout is that Monday night game against between Spurs and Manchester City. If I'm honest, I probably prefer a Spurs win. I know a lot of people are saying that they'd rather a draw, they'd rather both teams drop points, but I think in the grand scheme of things, looking ahead to the amount of games between now and the end of the season, I do think Spurs will drop off, and I think Man City are always going to be our number one rivals for that title come the end of the season. So I do think really the best case scenario is Manchester City dropping all 3 points and Spurs getting away with a win. But all things considered, either of them dropping points is still a very, very good thing indeed, even if it's Man City getting the win. And of course, the game is taking place at Wembley just a day after an NFL game. So the pitch will probably be absolutely trash. So we could end up seeing injuries on both sides as well, which is, at the end of the day, it is a positive thing for Liverpool. That apart from that game between those two, you've also got Chelsea travelling away to Burnley, which isn't necessarily what it used to be, but it is still a difficult fixture, especially after a Europa League game as well. And you've got Arsenal playing away to Crystal Palace, which is never easy. Also, they are playing after a Europa League game. So when you look at the games that all of our title rivals at the moment, all the teams that are there or thereabouts at the top of the table have, we have got a much easier game than pretty much all of them. And I think that's something that we might start to see an awful lot, because Liverpool have come out of their most difficult patch of fixtures now, and we've now got a long stretch where most of our games, aside from that away game against Arsenal, are pretty winnable, and those teams that we're in contention with at the top of the table are going to start playing each other more and more, and crucially taking points off of each other. So that is an incredibly positive sign. Hopefully we can kick off that run with this game at the weekend and potentially even go clear at the top of the Premier League table. So team news going into the game, Jurgen Klopp had his press conference today, and he did say that both Naby Keita and Jordan Henderson are injured. He didn't seem to necessarily specify just how long they'd be out. I feel like Jordan Henderson is probably going to be back sooner rather than later. Naby Keita is a little bit different because it seems like it's been an ongoing back issue, and it is possible, given how well our current midfielders are playing at the moment, that Jurgen Klopp is content to just wait until Naby Keita is fully over that before putting him back into the side, rather than rushing him back to try and fill a hole in midfield or anything like that. So apart from that, they are definitely going to be missing the game this weekend. There aren't really any other injuries, which is absolutely fantastic. There is also, of course, no midweek game after this, which does mean that there's ever so slightly less pressure to rotate. I think Jurgen Klopp can maybe think about what is his best starting 11 for this game and whether or not he can actually get away with playing that, and given that they've got a whole week off before that crunch tie against Arsenal next weekend. And then I think the other really interesting question is how we go about selecting our formation for this game, because obviously it has been 4-3-3 for pretty much every single match for the last year or so, potentially even 2 years. But the 4-2-3-1 we played against Red Star, not only did it work really well, it seemed to tactically suit that kind of game where we had just that one extra attacking player in Xherdan Shaqiri. We had two midfielders who were both perfectly capable of doing defensive work, but never mind the screen turning off, it does that all the time nowadays. But they're both perfectly capable of both doing defensive work and then getting forward and helping out the attack as well. And I think the game against Red Star will hopefully be very similar to the one that we have at the weekend. I'm hoping that it plays out in a similar way, certainly tactically, maybe not in terms of the result and the scoreline, although that would of course be absolutely fantastic. But I can certainly see that 4-2-3-1 being the kind of formation that Klopp would look at and think it perfectly suits this game. The question, of course, there is whether or not you are going to rotate, and if you are, who you're going to bring in to replace the players who suited that formation down to the ground on Wednesday night. So as for the actual starting 11, I'm going to go with Alisson Becker in goal. There's no question about it. He is just our best goalkeeper. He's absolutely fantastic. He's only conceded 3 goals in 9 Premier League games, and long may that incredible stat continue. I can certainly see him picking up a clean sheet this weekend. The back 4, I think you go with Gomez and Virgil van Dijk at centre-back. You know, there's always the argument that you could rotate, you could bring a Matip or a Lovren and maybe even push Gomez out into right-back or anything like that, but I think only change your back 4 when either there's an injury or you absolutely have to because there's huge fixture congestion. You know, you look at things like that December period where you're playing like 3 games a week and stuff like that. That is where you do have to think about things like rotating your defenders just to avoid injuries and fatigue and everything like that. But when you've got a whole week after the game, there is no need for any sort of rotation there. So I think you go with Gomez and Virgil van Dijk as your centre-back pairing. Both of them absolutely fantastic, absolutely imperious. I cannot see Cardiff's attack getting past that pair. And then either side of them, Andrew Robertson, who is absolutely fantastic against Red Star. You know, I think he does need a rest. And if we did have a midweek game, I would be tempted to maybe field Moreno in this game. But because of that week-long rest, I think you can play Andy Robertson and then just hope that he fully recuperates over that week and is ready to go again against Arsenal. And then on the other side, I think you go with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's had a little bit of an iffy start to the season. You know, it hasn't quite gone his way, but I think this is the kind of game that really suits Trent. It's a game where, you know, he maybe doesn't have to do as much defensive work as he normally does, although that side of his game has come on an awful lot recently, but he can start to show what he's all about, what made us so excited about him in the first place, which is his incredible attacking talent, his ability to whip a ball into the box. You know, he's got Shaqiri potentially down that side as well, or whoever plays in that right mid role. If we play 4-2-3-1, he's got an extra attacker to pick out in the box as well, which is the kind of thing that I think really worked in Robertson's favour in the game against Red Star. And of course, if Robertson is a little bit fatigued, then he might want to maybe give it a little bit of a rest on the running, stay back and just sit it out with the defence a little bit more and just ask Trent Alexander-Arnold to bomb on an awful lot more. I can maybe see that being a way that we get around the potential fatigue issue with the fullbacks, where we just say one of them gets a lot of responsibility placed on their shoulders, the other one is just allowed to defend a little bit more, and then we just alternate between games. And in games like the ones against Red Star and Cardiff, I think you could certainly get away with that. And then in the midfield, I think we're going to go with the 4-2-3-1 again, because I think that worked so well against Red Star, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then I think we are going to go again with Wijnaldum and Fabinho. I think Fabinho has to go in the side after his performance against Red Star. I think it's certainly a great opportunity for Jurgen Klopp to test whether that was just a really good performance from him, or whether that's what we're going to be seeing week in, week out from Fabinho now. Because if he can deliver that kind of game on a regular basis, then there's no reason to say why he wouldn't become a regular first team player for Liverpool from now on. So I think you definitely play Fabinho, and then there's maybe a shout for playing James Milner, and I'm looking at that more from a perspective of testing Fabinho than a tactical thing, because obviously Gini Wijnaldum is used to playing the number 6 role. He's used to helping out defensively, whereas Milner is much more of a box-to-box or even a withdrawn number 10 type of player. So I think if you play Milner alongside Fabinho in that midfield too, you're putting a bit more pressure on Fabinho to try and do the defensive work, because he hasn't always got that partner in a player like Gini Wijnaldum who's going to bail him out when things go a little bit south or he makes the odd mistake or stuff like that. So if he wants to test Fabinho, then maybe play James Milner and also give Wijnaldum a little bit of a rest. But I do think, you know, Wijnaldum, he only played 45 against Huddersfield. He did play the full match against Red Star, but that game did kind of calm down for the last half an hour and no one was really playing at full capacity towards the end of that game. So I think he will be absolutely fine. And I think that little double pivot of him and Fabinho looks so good that I think you should just keep on playing it to see whether we can carry on using it and whether it could be our first choice midfield pairing for the season. And then moving on to the front 3 or 4, I'll start with the 3 that kind of sits behind the striker. I think at right mid, you've got to go with Xherdan Shaqiri. He's in fantastic form at the moment. He is crucially getting the best out of the other attackers as well. He's providing a really excellent service for them that we haven't seen from other midfielders so far this season, and he certainly seems to thrive in that right mid role against Red Star the other night. So I think you've got to play Xherdan Shaqiri because he will get get the best out of the front three. I think in that number 10 role, you go again with Roberto Firmino because it did certainly seem to work. And I think it's kind of similar to what we did in the last game of last season against Brighton, where we did play a 4-2-3-1. I think just having that extra attacker works because everyone has that little bit more space to work in. And I think especially in these kind of games against lower table sides that are more interested in defending and coming out with their pride than coming out with any sort of result, playing with that front four rather than a front three really does help because it just opens up a little bit more space and allows them to maybe experiment a little bit more with where they're going to go on the pitch, what they're going to try and pull off and stuff like that. So I think you definitely go with Firmino again in that number 10 role, Mane again at left mid, and then I think I'm going to go unchanged. I'm going to go with Salah down the middle. He was the one player that I was umming and ahhing a little bit on because I think he did play pretty much the whole game against Huddersfield and most of the game against Red Star Belgrade as well. So there's maybe a shout that you do want to rest him there, but he did only play one game during the international break and he came back to Liverpool early. And again, we've got that week-long break after this. And given the form he's in, the fact that he feels like he's starting to hit the kind of goal-scoring heights that we saw from him last season, and I know it's only 2 games, but you want to try and keep that going. You want to perpetuate it. You want to keep him in the kind of rhythm that he's in at the moment. And if you drop him from the starting 11, you're not going to do that. So I think we should start Salah up top with those 3 behind him. And all in all, we should go unchanged with our starting 11. So taking a look at Cardiff then, obviously they are a Neil Warnock side, and I think that tells you all you need to know about how they're going to set up. They are going to try and be difficult to break down. They are going to have plenty of men behind the ball. They're generally going to try and get on our nerves by parking not 1, not 2, but probably 3 buses in front of their goal. But I think the thing to remember is we are just a little bit better than them. And I think while teams that park the bus can still cause Liverpool problems, if it's a Man U or a Juventus or something like that parking the bus, it could be annoying and we could struggle to break them down. But when it's a Cardiff, it's just not the same. And I think that's something that Man City have started to do, where if you park the bus against them and do it well, fine, you will come out with a good result. Well, Liverpool did it in the second half of the Champions League game against them last season when we beat them 3-0 at Anfield, and it worked to maximum effect. They couldn't get a sniff. But when teams like Cardiff try and do it against them, and we've seen Cardiff do it against them this season, it just doesn't work. You know, they lost 5-0 to Man City, and I think if they do try and park the bus against us, they could be headed for a similar outcome, because at the end of the day, Liverpool have got the patience and they've got the quality and they've got the strength in depth as well, that you just cannot go 90 minutes just trying to defend and expect to get some sort of result out of the game. So I think if Cardiff do come and set up to park the bus, then I think they could end up getting absolutely battered, and I certainly don't think they will get a result out of the game. They have, however, got a little bit of attacking threat. It's nothing mega. It is a little bit like Huddersfield, where I think they will try, but they won't necessarily have the qualities to actually finish off any of their chances. They have got a player called Josh Murphy who does look like he's meant to be the bright spark in the team. You know, he's fast, he's confident on the ball, he looks to drive forward with it and create chances. So I think if they are looking to maybe get some goals, and you know what, I can almost kind of see that happening, because I'll come on to Neil Warnock a little bit later, but I don't think he really sees this as a game where he's going to try and get a 0-0. I almost see this as a game where he's just going to treat it as a free hit and hope for the best, and you know, maybe come out with some sort of result or something like that. So I can almost see them maybe committing to going forward a little bit, and maybe Josh Murphy is the kind of player that they'll try and go through for something like that. However, he is an injury doubt for this game. He is apparently nursing an injury, according to, I think it's either the Cardiff press conference or the BBC Sport news page. So it's possible that they won't even have their star player for this game, and I think if they don't have him, I can't see where the goals come from at all, because they really just aren't that good. And I mean, Neil Warnock himself described beating Liverpool, I think it was in his press conference today, as virtually impossible. And if that's not a defeatist mentality, then I don't know what is. And you know, Neil Warnock's been doing that all the way through this season. He's in every single interview he's done, he's already been talking Cardiff down and saying they're probably going to get relegated and stuff like that. It's almost like he's just saying they're here for the ride, they're here for the fun of it, and they don't really care whether they get relegated or not, which is a weird mentality. I mean, it remains to be seen whether or not that's going to work, but I think if you want to come to Anfield and play against this Liverpool side, that's not the mentality you need to have. You need to be absolutely focused to the max, and I just feel like Cardiff are almost just going to roll over and die. And you know, I could be wrong. This could be a really, really tough game. If they do bring their A game, or if they do manage to get a few chances on the counter or stuff like that, then it could end up being very different. But on the whole, I think this is absolutely a game that Liverpool should not only be winning, but winning by something ridiculous, like 5-0 or something like that. So that is all today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. I will, of course, be back tomorrow for the post-match video outside Anfield once again, which I'm very, very excited for. Apart from that, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow with the post-match reaction. Until then, bye for now.